When most people think of poetry, they think limericks or love poems. But poetry is a much deeper sense. Indeed, some of our earliest written language may have been poetry to express the inner selves that we want to bring out into the world. For our deepest desires, our deepest fears, or our deepest hopes. The Rubaiyat by Omar Khayyam. Read by Karl. Wake, for the sun who's scattered on to flight, the stars before him from the field of night, drives night along with them from heaven and strikes the Sultan's turret with a shaft of light. Before the phantom of false morning died, methought a voice within the tavern cried, when all the temples prepared within, who nods the drowsy worshipper outside? And as the cock crew, those who stood before the tavern shouted, open then the door. You know how little while we have to stay, and once departed may return no more. Now the new year reviving old desires, the thoughtful soul to solitude retires, where the white hand of Moses upon the bough puts out, and Jesus from the ground suspires. Iram indeed is gone without his rose, and Janseed's 7-ring cup where no one knows, but still a ruby kindles in the vine, and many a garden by the water blows. And David's lips are locked, but in divine, high-piping Pevely, with wine, 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 red wine, the nightingale cries to the rose, that sallow shriek of hers to Incardine. Come, fill the cup, and in the fire of spring your winter garment of repentance fling. The bird of time has but a little way to flutter, and the bird is on the wing. Whether at Nishapir or Babylon, whether the cup with sweet or bitter run, the wine of life keeps oozing drop by drop, the leaves of life keep falling one by one. Each morn 1,000 roses bring, you say. Yes, but where leaves the rose of yesterday? And this first summer month that brings the rose shall take Zamshad and Kakobad away. Where to take them? What have we to do? With Kakobad the Great, or Kaikashru? Let Zam and Rustum bluster as they will, or Hatim call to supper, heed not you. With me along the strip of herbage strown, that just divides the desert from the sown, where name of slave and sultan is forgot, and peace to Mahmud on his golden throne. A book of verses underneath the bough, a jug of wine, a loaf of bread, and thou, beside me singing in the wilderness. Oh, wilderness were paradise enow. Some for the glories of this world, and some sigh for the prophet's paradise to come. I take the cash and let the credit go, nor heed the rumble of a distant drum. Look to the blowing rose about us. Lo, laughing, she says, into the world I blow. At once the silken tassel of my purse tear, and its treasure on the garden throw. And also husband the golden grain, and also flung it to the winds like rain. Alike to no such arid earth are torn, as buried once, man wont dig up again. The worldly hope men set their hearts upon turns ashes, or it prospers, and anon, like snow upon the desert's dusty face, letting a little hour or two, is gone. Think, in this battered caravanserai, whose portals are alternate night and day, how sultan after sultan with his pomp abode his destined hour and went his way. They say that wire no wizard keep the courts where Jamseed gloried and drank geep, and Bahram, that great hunter, the wild ass, stamps o'er his head but cannot break his sleep. I sometimes think that never blows so red the rose is where some buried Caesar bled, that every hyacinth the garden wears dropped in her lap from some once lovely head. And this reviving herb whose tender green flutters the river lip upon which I lean. Ah, lean upon it lightly, for her knows from what once lovely lip it springs unseen. Ah, my beloved, fill the cup that clears today past regrets and future fears. Tomorrow, why tomorrow I may be myself with yesterday 7,000 years. For some we loved, the loveliest and the best, that funniest vintage rolling time has pressed, have drunk their cup a round or two before, and one by one crept silently to rest. And we that now make merry in the room, they left in summer dresses in new bloom. Ourselves must we beneath the couch of earth descend, ourselves to make a couch For whom? Ah, make the most of what we yet may spend, before we too into the dust descend. Dust into dust, and under dust to lie, sans wine, sans song, sans singer, and sans end. Alike for those who for today prepare, and those that after some tomorrow stare, a muezzin from the tower of darkness cries, Fools, your reward is neither here nor there. With all the saints and sages who disgust of the two worlds so wisely, they are thrust, like foolish prophets forth, their words to scorn, or scattered, and their mouths are stuffed with dust. Myself, when young, did eagerly frequent doctor and saint, and heard great argument about it and about, but evermore came out by the same door wherein I went. With them the seed of wisdom did I sow, with mine own hand wrought to make it grow. This is all the harvest that I reaped. I came like water, and like wind I go. Into this universe, and why not knowing, there whence, like water willy-nilly flowing, and out of it as wind along the waste, I know not whither willy-nilly blowing. What, without asking, hither hurried whence? What asking, whither hurried hence? O many a cup of this forbidden wine must drown the memory of that insolence. Up from the earth's centre through the seventh gate rose, and on the throne of Saturn sate, and many a knot unravelled by the road, but not the master knot of human fate. There was a door to which I found no key. There was a veil through which I might not see. Some little talk a while with me and thee there was, and then no more of thee and me. Earth could not answer, nor the seas that mourn, in flowing purple of their Lord forlorn. No rolling heaven, with all its signs revealed, and hidden by the sleeve of night and morn. Then of the thee in me works behind the veil, I lifted up my hands to find a lamp amid the darkness, and I heard, as from without, that me within thee blind. Then to the lip of this poor earthen urn I leaned, the secret of my life to learn, and lip to lip it murmured, While you live, drink, for once dead you shall never return. I think the vessel that with fugitive articulation answered, once did live, and drink, and ah, the passive lip I kissed, how many kisses might it take, and give? For I remember stopping by the way, to watch a potter thumping his wet clay, and with its all obliterated tongue it murmured, Gently, brother, gently, pray. And as not such a story from of old, down man's suggestive generations rolled, of such a clod of saturated earth, cast by the Maker into human mould. And not a drop that from our cups we throw, from earth to drink of, but may steal below, to quench the fire of anguish in some eye, there hidden, far beneath and long ago. As then the tulip for her morning sup, of heavenly vintage from the soil looks up, do you devoutly do the like, till heaven to earth, in virtue like an empty cup? Perplex no more with human or divine, tomorrow's tangle to the winds resign, and lose your finger in the tresses of the cypress, slender minister of wine. And if the wine you drink, the lip you press, ends in what all begins and ends in yes, think then you are today what yesterday you were tomorrow, you shall not be less. So when the angel of the darker drink at last shall find you by the river brink, and offering his cup invites your soul forth to your lips to quaff, you shall not shrink. Why, if the soul can fling the dust aside, and naked on the air of heaven ride, were't not a shame for him, in this clay carcass crippled to abide? 'Tis but a tent where takes his Wednesday ride, a sultan to the realm of death addressed. The sultan rises, and a dark Farash strikes, and prepares it for another guest. And fear not lest existence closing your account in mine should know the like no more. The eternal sake from that bowl has poured, means the bubbles like us, and will pour. When you and I behind the veil are past, oh, but the long, long while the world shall last, whichever coming a departure heeds, as the sea's shelf should heed a pebble cast. A moment's halt, momentary taste of being from the well amid the waste, and lo, the phantom caravan has reached the nothing it set out from. Oh, make haste. Would you that spangle of existence spend about the secret? Quick about it, friend. As here, perhaps, the false and true, and upon what prithee may life depend? A hair perhaps could devise the false and true. Yes, and a single eyelash for the clue. Could you but find it to the treasure house, and peradventure to the master too, whose secret presence, though creation's veins, running quicksilver like, eludes your pains, taking all shape from Ma to Mahi, and they change and perish all, but he remains. A moment's guest, and back behind the fold, immersed of darkness round the drama rolled, which for the pastime of eternity he doth himself contrive, enact, behold. But if in vain, down on the stubborn floor of earth, and up to heaven's unopening door, you gaze today while you are you, how then, tomorrow, you when shall be you no more? Waste not your hour, nor in the vain pursuit of this and that endeavour and dispute. Better be jocund with a fruitful grape than sadden after none or bitter fruit. You know, my friends, with what a brave carouse I made a second marriage in my house, divorced all barren reason from my bed, and took the daughter of the vine to spouse. For is and is not, though with rule and line, and up and down by logic I define, of all that one should care to fathom, was never deep in anything but wine. But my computations, people say, reduced the year to better reckoning? Nay, 'twas only striking from the calendar, unborn tomorrow, and dead yesterday. And lately, by the tavern door agape, came shining through the dusk an angel shape, bearing a vessel upon his shoulder, and he bid me taste of it, and was the grape. The grape that can with logic absolute the 72 jarring sects confute, the sovereign alchemist, and in a trice life's leaden metal into gold transmute. The mighty Mahomet, Allah-breathing Lord, that all the misbelieving and black horde of fears and sorrows that infest the soul scatters before him with his whirlwind sword. Why, be this juice the growth of God, who dare blaspheme the twisted tendril as a snare? A blessing we should use it, should we not? And if a curse, why then, who said it there? I must abjure the balm of life, I must, scared by some after-reckoning taking trust, or lured with hope of some diviner drink to fill the cup when crumpled into dust. Oh, thoughts of hell and hopes of paradise, one thing at least is certain, this life flies. One thing is certain, and the rest is lies. The flower that once has blown forever dies. Strange is it not, that of the myriads who before us passed the door of darkness through, no one returns to tell us of the road which to discover we must travel to. The revelations of devout and learned who rose before us, and as prophets burned, are all but stories which awoke from sleep. They told their comrades, and to sleep returned. I sent my soul through the invisible, some letter of that afterlife to spell, and by my soul returned to me, and answered, I myself am heaven and hell. Heaven but the vision of fulfilled desire, and hell the shadow from a soul on fire, cast in a darkness into which ourselves, so late emerged some, shall so soon expire. We are no other than a moving row of magic shadow shapes that come and go, round with the sun-illumined lantern held at midnight by the master of the show. But helpless pieces of the game he plays upon his checkerboard of night and days, hither and thither moves and checks and slays, and one by one back in the closet lays. The ball, no question, makes of A's and no's, but here and there as strikes the player goes, and he that tossed you down to the field, he knows about it all, he knows. The moving figure writes, and having writ, moves on, nor all your piety nor wit shall revert back to cancel half a line, nor all your tears wash out a word of it. And that inverted bowl they call the sky, whereunder crawling cooped we live and die, lift not your hands to it for help, for it as impotently moves as you or I. When earth's first clay they did the last man knead, and thereof the last harvest sowed the seed, and the first morning creation wrote, when the last dawn of reckoning shall read. Yesterday this day's madness did prepare, tomorrow's silence triumph or despair. Drink, for you know not whence you came nor why. Drink, for you know not why you go, nor where. I tell you this, when started from the goal, o'er the flaming shadows of the foal, of heaven Parwin and Mustare they flying, into my predestined plot of dust and soul. The vine has struck a fibre, which about it clings my being. Let the dervish flout. Of my base metal may be filed the key that shall unlock the door he howls without. And this I know, when on the one true light, keynote to love, or wrath consume me quite, one flash of it within the tavern caught, better than in the temple lost outright. What, out of soundless nothing to provoke a conscious something to resent the yoke of unpermitted pleasure under pain of everlasting penalties it broke? What, from his hopeless creature be repaid? Pure gold for what he lent him dross allayed. Sue for a debt he never did contract. Can an answer, oh the sorry trade. O thou who didst with pitfall and with gin beset the road I was to wander in, thou wilt not with predestined evil round enmesh and then impute my fault to sin. O thou who man of baser earth did make, and even with paradise devised the snake, for all the sin whereas the face of man is blackened, man's forgiveness give and take. As under cover of departing day, slunk hunger-stricken Ramazan away, once more within the potter's house alone, I stood, surrounded by the shapes of clay. Shapes of all sorts and sizes, great and small, stood along the floor and by the wall, and some loquacious vessels were, and some listened perhaps, but never talked at all. Said one among them, surely not in vain, my substance of the common earth was taken, and to this figure moulded to be broke, or trampled back to shapeless earth again. Then said a second, ne'er a peevish boy would break the bowl from which he drank in joy, and he that with his hand the vessel made were surely not in after wrath destroy. After a momentary silence spake some vessel of a more ungainly make. They snare at me for leaning all awry. What, did the hand then of the potter shake? Whereat some one of the loquacious lot, I think a Sufi pipkin waxing hot, all this of potter, tell me then, who is the potter, pray, and who the pot? Why, said another, some there are who tell, of one who certainly was tossed to hell, the luckless pots he marred in making. Pish, he's a good fellow, and 'twill all be well. Well, murmured one, let those who make or buy, my clay with long oblivion is gone dry, but fill me with the old familiar juice, methinks I might recover by and by. So while the vessels one by one were speaking, the little moon looked in on all that were seeking, and then they jogged each other, brother, brother, now for the porter's shoulder not a creaking, and with the grape my fading life provide, and wash the body whence the life has died, and lay me shrouded in a living leaf by some not unfrequented garden side, that e'en my buried ashes such a snare of vintage shall spring up into the air, as not a true believer passing by, but shall be taken unaware. Indeed, the idols I have loved so long have done my credit in this world much song, have drowned my glory in a shallow cup, so my reputation for a song. Indeed, repentance as before I swore, but was I sober when I swore? And then came spring and rose in hand, my threadbare penitence a pieces tore. As much as wine has played the infidel, and robbed me of my robe of honor, well, I wonder often what the vintners buy, one half so precious as the stuff they sell. Yet, that spring should vanish with the rose, that youth's sweet-scented manuscript should close, the nightingale that in the branches sang, whence and whither flown again, who knows? Would but the desert of the fountain yield one glimpse, if dimly, yet indeed revealed, to which the fainting traveller might spring, as springs the trampled herbage of the field. Would but so winged angel, ere too late, arrest the yet unfolded roll of fate, and make the stern recorder otherwise in register, or quite obliterate. Ah, love, could you and I with him conspire to grasp this sorry scheme of things entire, would not we shatter it to bits, and then remold it near to the heart's desire? The unrising moon that looks for us again, how oft thereafter will she wax and wane? How oft shall after rising look for us through this same garden, and for one in vain? And when like her, O Saki, you shall pass among the guest stars scattered on the grass, and in your joyous errand reach the spot where I made one turn down an empty glass. The end.